Alright, guys, welcome back to another. See, I always want to say episode, but they're not episode. Another Granny Joe show. There you go.
Wait,
So,
it's an episode of a Granny Joe.
yeah, I guess it is episode. An episode of the Granny Joe show. So we're gonna be reviewing Resident Evil 7 just because we just played it. We just finished it yesterday. So while it's fresh on our minds, even though I'm tired as fuck, we're going to review it and talk about what we thought of it. So Michelle, what did you think of the game overall?
And I mean this in the nicest way, but overall I was a little underwhelmed by it, even though I loved the game.
Yeah.
I was kind of underwhelmed just because it was so promising at the very beginning of the
Yeah,
game.
I agree. I agree with that.
It
Yeah, I
didn't-
agree.
It somehow, it didn't feel short to me, but it didn't feel finished.
Yeah, I
Some aspects of
agree
it just
with
didn't feel, some parts just didn't quite feel right, or as composed as I was sort of led to believe from the first 2 hours of it.
what I got a feeling from the game, for those who, this will have minor spoilers at the beginning, and then we'll
Yeah.
get into like heavier spoils. But how the game overall felt like to me from beginning to end is that they had a specific idea and direction at the beginning of the game, and they're developing the game, and they're going strong, and everything's going according to plan. And then near the end of the game, they get closer to the deadline, and they think to themselves, well, shit, we have all this crap we need to put in this game. We don't have time to put it into the game, so we're going to cut corners, and we are going to become unorganized. And that's how it felt like to me, was that the beginning was strong, they knew really what they wanted to do, and then the last part, they kind of scrambled together as like a deadline, which I have a feeling is what happened, because we're right now, Michelle and I are in college. We have teachers that are in the AAA field, and based off what they're saying, is a lot of times like near the end, like when you play a game and there's things with it that don't sit with you well, it's mostly because of like a time problem. So for me, like the later parts felt like it was like more of an issue with time. Like they didn't have quite enough time to like really like go through it and make sure that it actually worked. So like the beginning was really like, I liked the beginning significantly more than the ending, because the beginning felt like it was trying to do something original, and then but the ending, like as they got closer to the ending, it felt like more and more like it was going into the Resident Evil ruts that the series overall has been in. Like for example, like I was kind of joking with Michelle that it's almost like the entire team collectively was like, yes, we want to go into a new direction. We want to do something new with the Resident Evil series. But one guy named Jim was like, nah, man. We want all the stupid shit that was originally in Resident Evil 6. He's the guy who like made Resident Evil 6 and 5. It's like, no, I want some stupid shit in there. And like while they weren't looking, he just like wrote down like a few of the bosses. Like he's like, I get that you guys want to do this cool thing with like a family, but like I want a boss with like giant eyeballs. I don't want him to say crazy shit like, I'm gonna get you, and so
That wasn't the thing.
that
With
was
that,
too
though, is
silly to me.
I don't necessarily mind that kind of thing, but what I think that the game overall kind of struggled with is a consistency. Like when you're first introduced to the game, they sort of are the characters. You have these great characters that kind of come up, and they're very, there's something very likable about them, and you have a few sort of boss fights with them, and the boss fights that are presented to you at the beginning of the game
are pretty cool.
are pretty cool,
Yeah, I
and
like them.
consistent, and they exist within this realm that makes sense. And then it sort of branches out into these huge monsters with like eyeballs everywhere, and it gets very Resident Evil 5 and 6.
It gets
So
fantastical.
it sort of lacks consistency, and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, well, it's a Resident Evil game, therefore you expect those elements, but if I have not played a previous game, it just feels so out of place.
Yeah.
Elements of it were so, to me, like the big toothed monsters that were like down in the basement and
Weren't scary.
weren't that
Yeah.
scary because I've already seen those sort of creatures before,
Yeah.
and it really took me away from the game because my favorite parts were those characters that they had
Yeah.
introduced. Those were the things that they present at the beginning, so it's something that I expect through the whole story, and they sort of drift from that by the end.
Well, it like the beginning I felt like was really well, it was disturbing. The beginning part was very disturbing because it felt very realistic to a certain extent. It felt like relatable to the point of like
I don't know if it was relatable, but it's something that you can see
but
yourself.
It was realistic. You
being
could
stuck
see
into,
this
yeah.
maybe not necessarily happening to someone, but maybe this would be a tall tale that someone told. Like, oh, I heard like a long time ago that some people went to this house and they were never seen again. And so this could be like a potential thing that you might see happening in our world in a weird way. Like, obviously there wouldn't be experiments, but you could see maybe some people stumbling on this weird house and being stuck in it with these strange people, and you could kind of see that. But then by the end it gets so fantastical that it's no longer scary because we don't really have to deal with like half these monsters in real life. Like the black goopy stuff with the long teeth, to me wasn't scary because they were too surreal to be relatable. But like the dad and the mom were really scary and creepy, especially since like they dealt with a lot of like abuse tropes. Like they were saying and doing things that like abusive parents do, and that makes it scary in itself because people have dealt with that in real life. They know how that is, and they know how terrifying that is in real life, which makes it that bit scary. But then by the end, I guess I'm gonna say spoiler alert, by the end that gets removed because you find out that the people owning the house, or people like the quote unquote crazy people that are running it, turns out that they're like that because of some science experiment, and they're not really like the way they are.
Yeah.
They're possessed, and that removes the scariness from it because then it's no longer relatable. It's not like does that make
I thought
sense?
it was just like a family that were infected by a parasite. I thought they were just infected by something, and it took over their minds.
What I took
and they sort of started kidnapping people because they were sort of disjointed from reality.
Yeah, what I thought was that maybe they were very disjointed from reality, as you said, but they were very intelligent people that were able to do experiments. So they did experiments on themselves and other people because they were like detached from reality, and they were like reenacting the reality that was in their mind. That's what I was getting from it.
Yeah,
but then
I
they
thought that
really
was
went
so cool, though.
I thought that was.
I think,
cool
too.
Too.
It invokes this fear of like, what if I got a parasite and I started to act outside of my own understanding and was struggling with being myself and being something else, and that invoked this fear in me. But right when it's like a little girl has this something or other, I don't know, it was just, it took it to a place that I didn't like it. It took it to a place that I particularly don't care for.
It got
that's
too
evil.
removed. It got too removed. And what I thought would have been interesting, and what I thought they were going to kind of do with it, because Silent Hill does this well, is that like mental health and having like really shitty mental health, like I've already talked about this on the channel, but I have mental health issues myself. And when it's really 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 severe, you do feel like you're kind of detached from reality. It does feel like you're oh my gosh, okay, yeah, go do that as I talk. We heard this sound and I got really freaked out, and it turned this is like Michelle's boiling water. But it does feel like you're like, I don't know how to describe it. Like sometimes it feels like something's like draining on you. It sucks. Like having a mental illness takes a lot out of you. It's really draining, and it does sometimes feel like you're kind of poisoned. There's something's planted in you that you can't quite get rid of. And it's always with you. You can't get rid of no matter how much you try. And so I thought that's what the direction they were going to go with the game, was that the zombie-ish virus that these people had were like the mental illness they were dealing with. Like it would have been a cool metaphor and a kind of a cool interpretation of the Resident Evil series and the idea of zombies. I mean, it would have been a cool direction to go on, since this was a more serious game. And I know the other games were campy, but I thought it was like going to be a good direction. And with the dad, because at the beginning, when you fight the dad's really wacky. He's kind of a wacky character. And I thought, well, okay, so he's wacky, so they're kind of keeping the B-movie. They're keeping some of the B-movie vibes. but he, by having him a little bit wacky, but then they went to B movie at some point. It went a little bit too much like old Resident Evil, and it just wasn't scary.
It sort of lost me right when you get on the boat and you leave with Mia or Zoe or whatever.
Yeah.
It sort of lost me at that point because it felt like two different games. The gameplay just got cut in half and it was really inconsistent.
Yeah, I agree with that. I felt like right with the ship is when the development team was like, well, shit, guys, we need to ship this. Pun not intended. But that's when they had to ship the game, right?
Yeah, no, right.
So,
it didn't come. Did not care for the boat at all.
That was the part where they were like,
a needed thing that drew they were trying to draw this series together.
Yeah, they're trying to put
and
Resident Evil in there.
That was unnecessary.
But honestly, if they wanted to tie in the series, I actually felt like the part, like at the very, major spoilers, because I'm about to spoil the ending, but at the ending, you get rescued by, I think, Umbrella Corp, right?
Yeah, it's before.
And Chris Redfield is the guy that, like, helps you up to your feet. And Michelle and I thought that was awesome. We, like, high-fived and everything. Like, we're like, man, we were so into the fact that Chris Redfield was the guy. That would have been enough. Like, just enough of a nod.
They didn't need all the other stuff.
They didn't need all this stuff. Like, just having, like, Chris Redfield be like, I'm Redfield at the end would have been like, oh, what a nice way to end the series. It's like this really cheesy.
You had to bring it all together.
Yeah, it would have brought it together. It would have been like, oh, this nice cheesy ending. Like, it would have been like a reward for all the shit we dealt with at that point.
Because I had a hard time piecing together how the Umbrella Corps had to deal with this house and how she linked into it and her desperate need for a family. Evelyn, her desperate need for a family just didn't come together in my head or in the game, I don't think. I just thought it looked like a desperate attempt to have an enemy. When there didn't need to be one. There didn't need to be like this little girl thing.
Yeah, it didn't really.
I wish I had focused far more on the family than this.
Yeah, it wasn't really needed. Like, I think it would have made more sense if they, like, the scariness of child abuse and abusiveness of families like that is so scary in itself that you really don't need to have any of this other shit. So they had just like the little girl, but she was like a normal little girl that had to deal with being raised in that freaky environment, and what like the product of something like that would have been like way scarier than this girl that makes you, it's a black gookity blue blook. It's just like that wasn't really, and she looks so much like came out of like a movie, like a horror movie, and so she really, there was nothing like really relatable or down to earth about that girl. She was just so mystical.
Yeah.
So I didn't really.
It was alright, and then but the gameplay was really good but not consistent as well, because you build up this entire inventory, and for a good chunk of the game you don't have that inventory. Yeah. Like, the entire scene where you're on the boat, you lose all your items all over again. So, you're like, what? I don't like that at all. That feels rather abrupt, because it's never established beforehand that that's going to happen. There's nothing that sets that up. And, like, who was Zoe? Like, we never
never really knew what happened to Zoe. We didn't quite know what the hell happened to Lucas. Like, you fight Lucas, and then he just kind of disappears, and you're like, what? But what happened to him? Like, did he escape? Like nobody really knows. And so that felt like the developers were like, oh shit. Like when the game was done.
Yeah,
it was like
it felt rather rushed at the end.
They did feel rushed at the end.
It was not ideal.
Yeah, it was just
So but otherwise, I thought it was really good.
I liked the game, but
I just struggled with parts of it, like as it just felt like it was trickling down by the end of it. Like
I really liked the beginning. I think the part for me when it started to kind of lose it was right after the Margaret boss. Mm-hmm. Because the Margaret boss was probably this.
Well, leading up to her, even like she didn't have too much going on with her.
That's true, but her part I still liked. It was
immediately after the car scene with the police officer that it started to deteriorate.
Well, yeah, but I really liked the fight with Margaret. I thought Margaret as a boss was really cool. I know you didn't really like her, but I thought she was really creepy. That was probably one of the scariest things I've ever seen in a game. It was probably the Margaret scene where she was like this. A long-armed monster. I thought that was really creepy as a boss. But, so I was really scared of her. But I can see why someone wouldn't really. But she wasn't built up the same way the dad was. And even the dad wasn't really. Kind of died. Like, I don't know. He died early on, and then he came back near the end, but. Other than that, he wasn't really. Like, there just wasn't that much of a build up. And I feel like if it was a Silent Hill game, it would have really got you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if
I
you
think
compare this
Silent Hill
with
would've
Wall
done better.
Silent...
But maybe not, though, because the recent games have been the shit.
Well, no, I mean, yeah, the Silent Hill recent games have been not great, but I'm saying, like, comparing to... I know people don't like Silent Hill 4, but the villain there was, like, really creepy, and they really built him up for, like, a while, like, they really got his, like, family down and learning about, like, the dynamic of that family. And that game took, like, child abuse and made it that in itself scary. And that's, like, the relatability of that is what made it really terrifying. Because this kind of reminded me of Silent Hill 4. But Silent Hill 4 was just scarier. I love Silent Hill 4. It's one of my favorite games. Yeah, I know people don't really care for it. And I guess that's what Resident Evil 7 was trying to avoid. Like, it didn't want to be Silent Hill 4 because nobody liked Silent Hill 4 because it was so different than the rest of the series. So I guess that's where they put some of the Resident Evil stuff back into it. And I get it, but I guess for me, it's like, I'm personally fine with, like, a rehash of, I'm fine with it. Like, I'm fine with, like, a different take on the series. As long as the game is good. You know, it's like, it's short, good quality, then I'm fine with it. But this felt like it was just trying to be too many things, when it really should just focus on, like, maybe, like, a pie of a story versus trying to throw in the kitchen sink. Like, if it just focused on the family.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't try to get all this other stuff in there. Then.
So I'm shaky because I'm so hungry.
I know, you're really hungry. I'm hungry too. Well, I think I mean, I don't have much more to say about it. I do like to recommend the game.
I do.
I mean, people who
7 out of 10 or something. Or
yeah, I would give it like a 7.5. I don't think it was a bad game, but I do feel like it could be improved.
Mm-hmm.
But
I agree.
and I mean, people by this point probably have already played it because we were spoiled the whole thing. But I mean, I would recommend it, but I felt it just needed to be improved.
Do you have an this?
Oh, I forgot it in my purse.
Oh.
But alright, so I'll see you guys next time on another episode.
Alright,
Thank you for
bye.
showing up.